What's up everybody, this is the 2023 Volkswagen Arteon R-Line. So about the Arteon, well, the 2023 model year here is the second to the last. Volkswagen has said 2024 will be the final model year for the Arteon before it's replaced by the electric ID.7. So we're looking at a vehicle here that is living on borrowed time, but that doesn't make it any less sweet. And for 2022 and carrying over here to 2023, they got an upgraded engine here in the Arteon. So it gets a detuned version of the Golf R motor, does 300 horsepower now, a nice performance improvement over what was already a very nice vehicle with the previous Arteon. And I reviewed the Arteon a few years ago, really liked it, but thought it was worth rechecking out with this more powerful motor now. So other new things here. So the styling hasn't changed at all, but I think it's really aged really nicely over these past few years. I still love how those headlights and those LEDs flow into the grille seamlessly. I also really love this brand new color called Kingfisher Blue, and it really is a nice look, especially here in the sun. It's a really pretty blue. And you have some nice wheels here. Now, all versions of the Arteon are now R-lines all across the board. So you just have the three trims. They're all the sportier R-line styling now, so there is no more subdued Arteon like there used to be. But still looks great here with these 20-inch wheels you got on this top trim. And I love the fastback shape here of the Arteon still, the very smooth tail lights there in the back, and just the whole styling of this thing still is so classy. I think it's still going to continue to age well like it has the past few years here. And so overall, I just think the Arteon still looks great.
One thing that hasn't aged quite as well is the interior of the Arteon. Now, it still is a very nice place to be, and they did give it some updates here over the years, but the main sore spot is that you only have an 8-inch touchscreen. It's kind of low resolution and just a little unimpressive these days, especially at this vehicle's as-tested price of about $51,000. Even a Volkswagen GTI has a 9-inch screen these days, so I just wish they would have improved that screen a little bit, at least as far as the size. You have nice bezels here on the sides. You could have made it a little bigger. That's my only real complaint. Otherwise, the interior is very nice. And so, you know, you have these leather seats here in this top SEL premium trim. Unfortunately, though, for the 2023 model year, they must not have been able to do the ventilated and massaging seats. And so you get a $495 credit, which I think is a bit low for, you know, the features you're giving up. They should have given you more of a discount, but $500 off basically. And so these seats are just heated leather seats. And I think I'm really missing the perforation, especially here in the summer, and the cooling function. I would definitely try and find one that has those features because I don't think that credit makes up for that lack. But otherwise, they would have normally a massage function here for the driver's seat as well as the ventilation. And they're very soft, comfortable seats, though. They're really nice. The bolstering is appropriate for a vehicle like this. And I actually did about a 4.5-hour road trip in this vehicle, and these seats were really comfortable the whole time. So I really like them, other than the things they're lacking here for this model year in particular. Hopefully for 2024, that'll be remedied here for the final year. Anyway, another new thing you get here is the steering wheel. It gets the new Volkswagen wheel here with these capacitive touch buttons that you actually do have to press down on them still. But they're all illuminated and just a little different. Some people don't love them because you can accidentally turn on your heated steering wheel just with your thumb muscle here if you're holding it at the 9-3 grip. But aside from that, it still works great. Nice having the paddle shifters here on the wheel and a really great, you know, 9-3 grip and 10-2 notches and all that. It feels really nice to use. The gauges here in the Arteon are now digital as standard, and it's a nice display there. You still do have the non-digital readouts there for your coolant and fuel, but still really nice gauges. And I also really love the customization you have in them. It's a little tricky to find where to customize them, but you go into the infotainment screen and that'll allow you to, you know, change all the different things there. And it has lots of different views. It's a little underutilized. It's the same bones as the Audi system, but it doesn't get like the nice map views that the Audi system gets with the satellite imagery or anything like that. So in this, you know, it's a little less impressive, but still really nice to have. Great that they let you customize the colors and you can match it to the ambient lighting colors and all that. And so, you know, still a really nice gauge cluster nonetheless. But coming over to the center of the dashboard here, like I said, 8-inch touchscreen still works fine though, and I do like how it has the proximity thing, so it can sense when your finger is close and give you additional options there on the screen. And I like that it has volume and tune knobs here. That's something they fixed a few years ago. And it does have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, so it's great that it has that. And that's really what you're going to be using the most because the other stuff, you know, I mean, if you want to listen to radio stations and stuff, that's all fine, easy to do once you have all your favorites saved. It's not overly impressive. This system still, again, likes to bury some stuff in sub-menus. It can be a little bit annoying, but overall, you know, most of the time you'll just be using a smartphone integration most likely, and that is fine. It's just a little low resolution for the projection for the smartphone integration. The icons you'll see are really big. Some more modern integrations with CarPlay have smaller icons, so that's going to come down to personal preference, but it just means that all the icons are so big that they're actually a little fuzzy around the edges and just doesn't look quite as high resolution as the rest of the screen in its non-projection mode. But anyway, it's also hooked up to this Harman Kardon stereo here in these top trims, and it sounds sounds really nice. It's a really good sounding stereo, thankfully. Some Volkswagens in the past haven't had great stereos, but thankfully this one was pretty good. Not amazing, but pretty good, and no complaints really there. Coming down, you also have your capacitive touch buttons here for your climate control stuff, and while it wouldn't be my first choice, it's not the end of the world. It's not a deal breaker in my opinion. They still work fine most of the time, and it's auto climate control dual zone. You're probably not going to be messing with it a whole lot, so hopefully you can just set it and forget it. And then otherwise, just your typical usual Volkswagen stuff, a few buttons around the shifter, you have your usual cup holders, and nice large pockets on the doors here, and a little wireless phone charger right here by the shifter too. And you do have a little bit of patting down by your knee here, as long as your knee is up far enough. Where my knee falls, it falls right on hard plastic, unfortunately, but at least they made an attempt to give you some plushness up here at least, so I gotta give them some credit for that, but still wish it was a little bit plusher for this. And one other thing I love about this interior is the ambient lighting. They changed that in the past few years here, so it's really cool how you have not only the strip running across the dash, but you also have this really cool backlighting on the doors there, and at night that really makes a nice impression, and it's a really cool look and very creative, I have to say. So I think this is one of my favorite applications of ambient lighting I've seen in recent memory, and just a really well done setup there. One other little minor complaint is they call this a panoramic moonroof, and while it is slightly bigger than your average moonroof, it is not what most people would consider a panoramic view these days, with those typically going, you know, further into the back seat area. Also, going on to the back seat here though, I mean, it's a ton of space in the Arteon. They've, you know, been really spacious this whole generation. Nothing's changed there, but I'm 5'9", I'm sitting behind myself. I easily have 5 to 6 inches of legroom to spare, tons and tons of space, a good amount of headroom too, considering this is a sport back. You know, I still have a few inches to spare. You also have a fold down center armrest with a cup holder and ski pass through. There's dedicated air vents here, as well as their own climate control, and they would have heated second row seats here if, again, it was not the supply chain stuff that got nixed as well, but hopefully that'll come back for the 2024 model year. And they have their own pockets in the doors there, and a really nice comfortable back seat. The cargo space in the Arteon is also fantastic. It's really, you know, right up there with the Stinger as the best as far as an actual non-crossover cargo space goes. It is so long, so wide, a nice wide opening, just a huge amount of space. I really love it, and you know, I really wish that more people would check these out, because I really think that it would have more space than most people's crossovers, and put a lot of crossovers to shame with their cargo areas compared to this. It is a ton of space, should be more than plenty for most people. And even another nice little cherry on top is when you lift up the floor there, you will find a full-size spare tire. This one is not, you don't see it there, because actually it's running the spare tire currently, because the previous person that had this vehicle got a flat in it, but you have the full-size spare with the same wheel and everything, so they're able to pop that on and continue on. So, you know, really nice having a full-size spare. That makes it nice and handy for those kind of situations. So great you have that, a huge selling point. I believe that is only here on the top SEL Premium where you get that full-size spare. I would assume you're going to get a smaller spare, but still a spare tire there in that well whenever you go for the lower trims. But really a nice inclusion there, and a very rare inclusion most other companies don't bother with these days. So kudos to Volkswagen for that. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Arteon here has the regular Volkswagen key, nothing special there, but it's a nice small key, has a nice weight to it, and I like the metal here on the top, so it does feel a little more expensive, and so I really like it. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start, so you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. Alright, so setting off here in the Arteon. So the first thing that I appreciate about the Arteon, even on these 20-inch wheels, the ride is so smooth. You do have adaptive dampers as standard now in the Arteon, and they certainly help, but even in the normal mode, I mean, they're totally comfortable. The comfort mode makes it, you know, even a little bit more comfortable, and then there's a sport mode there. But even in all the modes, it's never super stiff. It doesn't make a huge change, but they just are always working in the background to give you a super smooth ride. And I mean, again, being on a 4.5-hour road trip in this thing, it was so smooth and comfortable, and even on rougher roads and stuff, it is so smooth. This is a great daily driver. It would be a great road tripper, and just a really nice vehicle to live with from a ride standpoint. It's also nice and quiet in here. I remember when I first reviewed the Arteon several years ago, I remarked how it basically just felt like a budget Audi A7, and I really still feel that way. It still feels so refined. I have to say it's probably the smoothest ride out of everything this competes with, which is a quickly dwindling segment, but even all those competitors that are going away here this year also, you know, just don't have a ride that can match this. I really think it is top notch. Other things here, so you have a pretty responsive throttle pedal. I will say this 7-speed DCT transmission that this is hooked up to, it's definitely favoring the higher gears and a little bit of a more relaxed feel. Even in sport mode, you know, sometimes it's a little slow to give me downshifts, But overall, at least the throttle response and all that is pretty good. Steering also feels really nice. You actually do get a good amount of feeling through the wheel, but it's not overly heavy or anything. Has a nice natural weight to it, and just it all again feels just really natural, normal, and how you want it to feel, honestly. And I will do a launch control start in a little bit, but first I'm just going to do my usual rolling acceleration, turn down onto this back road here, and see how it does. And here we go. Okay, see, it took what, like 3 seconds to give me that downshift, and then it hauls. It gets up to and goes really fast. A lot of power here. This motor is so strong. Again, 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo from the Golf R, just detuned a little bit, so it does 300 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque, and it'll do a 4.6 second 0 to 60 is what car and driver got whenever you have a launch control going, and it knows what it needs to do. Whenever you're rolling, though, that's a prime example. Everything's in its sportiest setting, and I'm still like 1, 2, 3. Okay, now we're going to finally have acceleration. And not only is it annoying, but if you're expecting to go and you're not going, that could also be a borderline safety issue. Like, it needs to be more responsive, and you know, I guess they just don't care because the ID7 is coming with instant electric response, and that will be definitely the way to go if you want to have something that's really quick to react. But this just the entire week, you know, I like this car, but I think the transmission, I just wish it was a little sporty. Now, thankfully, you do have paddle shifters here, and since it's a dual clutch, it's really nice and snappy, so we'll go ahead and do the manual shifting here. I mean, it's immediate. So if you don't mind paddle shifting around everywhere you go, I mean, you can get instant response that way, get exactly the, you know, response you're looking for. I mean, it's immediate with those upshifts and downshifts. Obviously, same great dual clutch you get in the, you know, Golfs and the Golf Rs and Audis and all that. I mean, it's really snappy. I really love this transmission in its manual mode. It's just that, at least the way the Arteon set up here, it is just set up to be a snooze fest if you don't have the manual shifting on, and it's just a little bit unfortunate that that slows it down a little bit. Good amount of power, though. I mean, it's a really nice improvement in performance. I think, you know, I think it's about 36 more horsepower now, and around that same amount of increase in torque as well. So, and I mean, the 0 to 60 for these things used to be, I think, in the low 6-second range. You're down almost 2 seconds on the 0 to 60, again, with that launch control activated. And Sophie on Redline Reviews told me that it's actually about a full second slower for the 0 to 60 if you don't do launch control. And so that's even assuming you're maybe brake torquing it still, because I mean, that was definitely, I spent 3 seconds just sitting there at 5 miles per hour before it actually started going. But you know, so launch control is gonna be where it's at if you really want to, you know, have a very snappy launch. Then I mean, 4.6 seconds is very impressive, and we'll try that out here in a minute. And doing an acceleration with the wheel turned here. It does put down the power very well whenever you have the all-wheel drive. So it has the 4Motion all-wheel drive on the top 2 trims. The base trim still is front-wheel drive only, and that could be a little bit more overwhelming with this amount of power for just the front wheels there, I'm sure. But with the all-wheel drive system here, it puts down the power very, very well. You also are running 245 wide Continental all-season tires here. So again, sportier tire setup can give you a little more grip if that's something you're looking for. But you know, I haven't had any issues with grip all week. And now we're on this road that generates some more road noise, a little bit of a rougher road, and still pretty nice and quiet in here. Again, very, very refined for this vehicle. But coming up some corners here I always take, and let's see how it handles. So pitching it in here, and there is a little bit of lean built in. I'm kind of surprised even in sport mode here the dampers aren't a little firmer, but it still handles itself really well. And yeah, it's, you know, pretty light these days. I mean, back when I first reviewed this, it felt a little heavy, but I think, you know, these days with modern stuff being so much heavier, this only weighs 3,913 pounds. And again, for how much space you have in the back there and all the refinement and the comfort and the power, you know, I think that's, you know, totally decent weight these days. And you know, I think actually it feels fairly light, you know, by modern standards here. Nice and low with the driving position and all that too. So it really gives you, you know, a great feel. And I have to say that actually, I think that it feels even a little more planted than the GLI. And so I think it's, you know, not quite as good as a GTI, of course, but I actually think that this is set up to feel even a little sportier than the GLI, in my opinion, which is also fun, but that just seemed like it had slightly lower limits. This seems like it's just a little bit of a, you know, broader wheelbase and, you know, wider track, and so just feels a little more confidence inspiring, I think. With the insane amount of comfort you have here, I think the handling is going to be totally fine for most people. Well, let's go ahead and try doing a launch control here. Left foot on the brake, I got the ESC off, and here we go, 4,000 launch. All right, got all 4 wheels to spin there, I think. Woo! And
And yeah, it gets up and goes really nicely. So that is the acceleration that you want and you're looking for there. So glad that it has the launch control there, because yeah, that is a nice takeoff there. And then just stopping on it from a stop. I mean, it is, pretty punchy whenever you are fully stopped. You just have to make sure that you're not, rolling at any kind of speed if you want any kind of fast response out of this thing, unless you have it in that manual mode. And now I'm out on the highway here in the Arteon, and again, such a nice, smooth cruiser. I'm just the normal mode here. There's the comfort mode to make it even more comfortable. But we have a gentle corner here coming up, and I have the travel assist selected, which means it's the adaptive cruise control system that also does do the lane keeping assist. It's still a hands-on system, and it will definitely scold you if you keep your hands off the wheel for more than a few seconds. Because on my long road trip, I was testing, what it lets you do and what it doesn't let you do. And I have to say that on the road trip, it was nice in a more relaxed setting, and there was a few instances where I was sitting in traffic, and so it was really nice to be able to do all that inching up and stuff automatically. But the travel assist, by the way, it still was not letting me have my hands off the wheel even at super low speeds. So it will do full speed adaptive cruise, but it won't do any kind of steering assist for you, at least as far as hands-free stuff goes. So just keep that in mind with this system. But I mean, it worked fine. I think for me, after 4.5 hours, being on the highway trying to try it, I just ended up, a little ways in, just being like over it, and it just comes down to your personality and your driving style. But for me, it still, was overly conservative with the following distances, and it still, was a little slow with the passes, and downshifting give me accelerations to pass people. And so I just ended up driving myself, but that's again going to totally come down to just your personality and all that. But it works fine. The lane keep assist system did a pretty good job. It never went over the lines or anything, and was giving me decent assistance, just not quite as assertive as many of the other lane keep assist systems out there these days. But it is really nice that adaptive cruise and lane keep assist are both standard across the board here in the Arteon now for 2023. So it's great that you have that. And there's also, blind spot monitoring, all the other usual tech. It also does have the auto park feature here you can play around with if that's something you want to try out. And so lots of tech, all the tech you would expect out of something in this segment, and it all works pretty well. Again, it just comes down to how much of that stuff you actually enjoy using. But the last couple of things to mention here are my fuel economy and the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as fuel economy goes, again, most of my driving was on the highway for that 4.5 hour road trip. I've put over 300 miles on this car this week, and I'd say about 250 of those were on the highway there. And it's actually really impressive. So these are rated at 22 in the city, 31 on the highway, and 25 combined. It actually beat that highway rating. On my road trip from Maryland to Pittsburgh, I was getting 33 mpg was my average for the trip. So beating the highway by 2 mpg there is really impressive. And so it's a very economical cruiser as well, all things considered. And I also love the range in this thing. It's a nice big tank, and so even after driving 303 miles, it's still telling me I have 185 miles of range left. So that also really helps with making this, a great daily driver, great road tripper, because it was showing me when I first set off on my trip that I was having over 500 miles of range. And as that MPG rating kept climbing, that range actually pretty much held steady as I was driving more miles. It was sitting right at like 500 miles of range there, even after several miles of driving. So, I mean, it is an impressive amount of range. So I love that about this thing, and it'd be really a top pick in my mind for road trips as a result. Now, as far as my around town MPG, I was getting basically about 21 mpg on average, which is actually not bad either. Now, that's pretty in line with most of the other competitors and stuff, and it's not amazing, but for the amount of luxury and the power you have, 21 mpg around town is also not bad. And again, that hits basically right there on that city rating. And so really happy with the fuel economy here in this vehicle. The last thing that I mentioned here is the pricing and how it compares to its competitors. So the Arteon for 2023 here starts at about $44,000 for the front wheel drive version, which again has lots of great standard equipment, lots of great standard safety tech, all those things. But whenever you go up to these higher trims, that's where it gets even tougher with the pricing. So like I said, this one as tested is just under $51,000. And that is where it gets to be a problem, I think. I know, yes, these are going to be on their way out, so the value of it is probably a moot point at this point. but it's just a tough thing to justify because you have the main competitor, which really matches this vehicle in every way, and it actually exceeds it in some ways, is the Kia Stinger, which is also on its way out and also in its final year here of production. But the Stinger has, even in its base GT line version, has 300 horsepower as well and about 15 more pound-feet of torque. That's 311 pound-feet of torque in that. And the Kia has bigger screens inside. It's got a 10-inch touchscreen. It's a little more plush inside, and it's just nicer overall. You also have that huge hatch just like in this, and that's actually a rear-wheel drive based all-wheel drive system, so a little bit of a more exciting setup than the front-wheel drive based setup you have here in the Arteon. And those, you can get a fully loaded Stinger, baseline Stinger, for like 40 grand, even with all-wheel drive. It's like maybe 41 tops. It's really so much cheaper than this, and it has a 10-year 100,000 mile warranty, and that 2.5 liter turbo motor is just really a nice punchy feel, and really a nice improvement there the Stinger got for its last, 2 model years here of its production. And so at the end of the day, there's just no world where I would ever pick this over the Stinger. Even if they were the same price, I'd probably go for the Stinger, but then whenever you tack on the extra 10 grand or whatever for this, I don't see the value there. I mean, yes, the ambient lighting is a little cooler, and it does have wireless Apple CarPlay. It's wired in the Stinger, so there is a few minor little things there, but nothing that to me is worth justifying, the 10 grand upcharge basically of this. And so that's the problem. If this were even 45, I'd say okay, maybe for the few $1,000s extra, it has a little bit of a smoother ride than the Stinger, and maybe for some people it makes sense. But at 51, it just does not make sense, and that's the bottom line here. And especially these days, again, all the competitors are going away this year basically, but the one new competitor, it doesn't have a hatch, but is the Toyota Crown, which is like a premium thing beyond the regular midsize sedans. And even the Toyota Crown, that has way more horsepower. It has 400 pound-feet of torque in its top hybrid max version, and those fully loaded are like 55 grand. So you're only 4 grand away from this, and they have the brand new, bigger touchscreens and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know. I like the Arteon. In a vacuum, it's great, and maybe on the used market, this will be a great pickup. But as far as new vehicles go, it's just really tough to justify. And, they are going to have a kind of successor here with the ID.7 that's going to be all electric, but that will also have a hatch, and that is going to be replacing this vehicle in the lineup. And, that should be an improvement, and, obviously give you the new tech and obviously the whole new powertrain and all that, and even better performance. So there's going to be lots of improvements there, but it's also almost certainly going to come with a higher price tag as well, so just get ready for that. That's gonna be even pricier than this is. So, but anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the Arteon. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Volkswagen for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.